the opportunity opened up at Bealls, and I talked to my dad, and he said, Bealls is a great company. You should definitely take this interview. Drove down here, so I essentially got no sleep. I figured I was going to just absolutely bomb the interview. I went to the Walmart down the street, shotgunned a couple Mountain Dews, and then came in here and actually did okay and got the job. I've always been extremely voracious. Any new knowledge I can acquire, that suits me just fine. So one of the things we focus on is whatever your desire is. If you're currently on the network team and you want to move into a different area, that door's open. And that's one of my favorite things to do is negotiate contracts. I think that may make me slightly insane, but yet it's one of my favorite things to do. Since the introduction of the values, people feel probably more intertwined with the fabric of what Bealls is.
What would you say are your biggest accomplishments from your 25 years here?
One of the things I always take pride in is the lack of attrition on my teams. It's the fact that the people on my team, the teams, they stay.
Enough about the Gators. Talk to me about you.
Well, so where should I start?
Yeah, I mean,
I was once a twinkle in my parents' eyes. And
maybe not back that far.
Okay.
We'll fast forward maybe by 10 years or so. What was childhood like for you?
So it was a really good childhood. So I grew up in a family of two kids. So me and my brother, and and I really lucked out. Because my middle name is Race. And it was a family last name, so it's given to me as a middle name. And my brother, unfortunately, also got a family last name, but his middle name is Whitthorne, so not nearly as cool as Race. But we moved around a little bit, but born and raised in Florida. I lived in Atlanta for 6 years, and then I moved back here to Sarasota in the early '80s, and I primarily grew up here before I went up to University of Florida for my collegiate years.
Cool.
But
Where were you born? In Florida?
Jacksonville.
Okay. Yeah, and then to Sarasota in the early '80s. So you've been in Sarasota, this area, for almost 40 years.
Yeah. There was absolutely nothing out east of the interstate. It was just like a dump, and
right.
that was it. So,
I remember I had a friend that lived out there, and we would go hunting for shark's teeth in his backyard. He had like a ditch behind his backyard. We would find huge shark's teeth. I mean, just nothing but wildlife back there. Now it's just, it's just community after community.
Yeah. Well, funny story. So one of my friends when I was in high school, he and his family had a house out there, and of course it had its own like they raised horses and everything like that, and I had never been out into the country, but, so we're walking around and we walked past this fence, and there's a wire at the top of the fence. And I didn't know what it was. He said, "Hey, Race, grab onto that." So I grab onto it, and of course it's electrical wire. So then I get shocked. He thought it was the funniest thing ever. I did not. But
no.
Yeah,
that's great. Funny in hindsight, or not even?
Yeah, it was kind of funny in hindsight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't have a heart attack, so it was funny.
Yeah. Good. What doesn't kill us, right? So, what after that? You what did you do? What was your first job?
So my first job was at Publix as a bagger. Then I did that, mowed lawns like most kids did. Worked at a nursing home for a while, and then actually throughout my college years at University of Florida, I came back home and I still worked at Publix, during like the Christmas break and during the summers and whatnot. So.
It was Florida like a crazy party school at that point in time?
It was the first couple of years, but then unfortunately my sophomore year, no, actually it was my junior year, was when the murders happened in Gainesville.
Oh,
and that changed everything, and justifiably so. But yeah, it was night and day between that event, and what came after. So yeah.
Yeah, we probably don't want to go down that rabbit hole for this podcast, but that was that was tragic. Okay, so then what did you study in Florida?
So I started off as an aerospace engineering major, and I did that for a couple of years, and then I ended up transitioning over to be a telecommunications major, and had really tough courses in that, like the history of television. So you can imagine that was a real grinder. So, but then I decided to transition out of that and go back to engineering. So I ended up graduating with an industrial engineering major.
Okay, and then what was your after college? What was your path?
So it was funny. So I co-opted with IBM for 2 semesters out in Texas. So that's when I lived in Austin, Texas. And at that time they said, "Race, when you graduate at the end of 1993, we've got a job for you." And then at the end of 1993, the economy cratered. So that job fell through. So I graduated at the end of 93, and I didn't go to any of the job fairs because I thought I had a job. So I graduated, and then I spent like that December and January, out on my parents' sun deck, just hanging out. And then my parents said, you need to get out there and get a job. So I went to the job fair for the University of Florida in January, and the job market was really tough. So the only job that was available for me was with EDS, Ross Perot's old company, and that was a job up in Detroit, Michigan. So I ended up taking the interview. So I fly up to Detroit, Michigan, in like the middle of February, and here I am, a Florida boy. I've never even been north of the Mason-Dixon line, so I had no idea what to expect. And of course, it was a blizzard. So I landed in the Detroit at the Detroit airport, and they take me out to the rental lot, and then the bus says, okay, the keys are in the car, and then they take off, and I go up the car, and I don't have any gloves. It's like 15 degrees out, and then I pull the handle, and the door won't open. I'm like, oh my god, and the bus is already gone. So then finally I get the door. It was like kind of frozen shut. So then I finally get the car started, and it took me like 2 minutes to find where the ignition was in this thing. So then I finally get it started, drive to the hotel, and then my first step, outside of the hotel was right onto black ice, so it fell right on my, what. So yeah. But then I got the job, so that was good.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah. And surprisingly, I absolutely loved Detroit. It gets kind of a bad rap, but it was really nice, particularly the suburbs. I lived in Troy, and then lived there for 3 years, and then moved out to Seattle for 3 years, and then moved back here in 2000.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. What was more pleasant, the frozen car door or the electrical fence?
Probably the electrical fence.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, because when you're a kid, you're like, wow, so the electrical jolt was actually kind of cool.
Okay.
So yeah.
Nice. And then did you start working for Bealls right away? Or?
Yep. In 2000, actually, that's why I moved down here, and it was a kind of a funny story. So I was looking to move back down here to be close to my parents because they both lived in Clearwater at the time. So the opportunity opened up at Bealls, and I talked to my dad, and he said, Bealls is a great company. You should definitely take this interview. So I scheduled the interview, but I was working out in Seattle at the time. So in order to take the interview down here in the morning, I caught a red eye out of Seattle. So I left SeaTac at like 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, flew straight through, landed in Tampa at like 6 o'clock in the morning. Drove down here. So I essentially got no sleep. I figured I was going to just absolutely bomb the interview. So I went to the Walmart down the street, shotgunned a couple of Mountain Dews, and then came in here and actually did okay and got the job. So
nice. And what was your first job?
I was here as a developer.
Yeah, you've had a great career with us. So what is that? That's 20. You started in 2003, so 20.
No, 2000. So 25 years.
25 years. Okay.
I started during the Clinton administration.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Nice. Very cool. So then your career path here has been, you've steadily risen throughout the ranks of the organization over that 25-year time period. Can you maybe walk us through a little bit of what you've done over that time?
Sure. So I was a prototypical propeller head, when I came here, doing development and whatnot. And but I've always been extremely voracious. Any new knowledge I can acquire, that suits me just fine. And so I started off as a developer, but I quickly moved into the database realm. Moved into system administration, quality assurance. So assuming each one of those roles throughout the first 5-6 years, I was promoted to a manager in 2006. And then I was running the web and data services team at that time. And then I continued to deepen my knowledge in that subject area. And then in 2011, I ended up getting promoted to director, essentially over that same area. But then I assumed ownership of the fledgling enterprise architecture practice. So and then continued in that role, and then eventually transitioned into the director of IT security in 2018, and then assumed the role of a division vice president and took over infrastructure and networking and telecom in 2019, and then in 2024 took over. Actually, a couple of years prior to that, I took over operations. So I was the DVP of operations, infrastructure, network, security, and enterprise architecture. As you know, the longest title in the company.
Yes, yeah, it's up there.
And then last year I was promoted to vice president. Yeah.
Was it October last year? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Nice. What would you say are your biggest accomplishments from your 25 years here?
One of the things I always take pride in is the lack of attrition on my teams. A lot of people are going to cite different projects that they're proud of. I'm certainly proud of a lot of the things that my teams have done. But it's the fact that my teams, the people on my team, the teams they stay. And I like to think that's in large part due to the family atmosphere that we cultivate. Everyone's empowered on the team. I want to make sure that I don't come across as being elevated or in a different status that they are. I want to make sure that they know that I'm their friend. I'm there for them. If they have any personal issues, I'm there for them. If they have any professional needs, I'm there for them. Mentoring, training needs, whatever the case may be.
And so so those are great ways to create that type of environment. What is the feedback that you get from those people directly about the environment that you're creating? Like, what do they say about what you're doing as a leader?
No, well, I think they all really appreciate the fact that if they seek any opportunities, the door is always open for them. So we've gotten a lot of feedback from people particularly on our service desk team. So one of the things we focus on is whatever your desire is. If you're currently on the network team and you want to move into a different area, that door's open. We'll give you the training. We'll help you out and whatnot. We have so many success stories, throughout my hierarchy. So, for instance, Chris on our security team, he was on the service. He was in the desktop operations team, and then he moved over into the security team. Has been invaluable for us for the last year. Nelson is one of our primary database admins. He was on the service desk. Doug Scott was on the service desk. So we're always looking for opportunities to bring people in from the stores to our service desk or into other roles, and then always make sure people have a path to promote up. And that's one of the things that Karen Beebe and I have worked extensively on, is making sure that everyone knows what those career paths are. In years past, it wasn't nebulous, but people didn't necessarily know how they could ascend. Now everyone knows exactly what their paths are, and if they choose to go onto a different path, that's perfectly acceptable, and we'll help them on that journey.
What has it been like working for Karen, I guess, is one question, but then like having reported to some of the leaders within the technology function for so many years, like how do you what have you taken away from the leaders of the technology team?
So everyone's different. It's going all the way back to like George Hiskus. He was very much a cost conscious CIO leader. And I remember I had two PCs in my office back in the day, and I asked him, "Hey George, can I please get like a little 4-port hub so I can have both these PCs online at the same time?" He said, "How much does that cost, Ray?" And I said, "I don't know, like $20." He said, "No, absolutely not. Just unplug the cable in one and plug it in the other one when you want to use it." It's like, okay. So that was kind of George, but I mean, it suited Bealls at the time. And then Joe.
I remember walking into and I'm sure I'm sure we'll talk about this at the next board meeting, but I remember walking into a restroom and turning on the lights at the restroom at ERB. And, there were like kind of these lights, and maybe it was every other light. So it was kind of dark in there, not totally dark enough to see, but I still, just decided that day I was going to just flip on the lights. And I was in the restroom, and Conrad walked in, Conrad Zemansky, and he said to me, costs a lot of money to fire up those halogen lights.
Yep. That sounds like Conrad.
Yeah. But I mean, that was the Hiskus, that was the mentality back in those days. And it's because of the beginnings that we came from as a company, and just, very, very humble beginnings, and losing the company to the bank in the Depression, and, just always a very, very conservative approach. And that definitely was a part of Steve Knoppig's, leadership style too, as well. It was very cost conscious, and it's great to a degree. Of course, you got to take some risks, and you've got to, money has to be flown in order for it to flow back in. It's got to flow out at sometimes, and so it's there's a balance there, and we were probably a bit too cautious at times throughout our history, and I don't think we're anywhere near being overly aggressive right now. I feel like we're still a very cost-conscious organization who's very much focused on expenses and capital spending, and making sure that we're doing that in a smart way. But probably some of those little $10, $5, $20 things are probably not what they used to be.
Right. Well, so funny story about Hiskus. So So we used to have donut day on every Friday. So everyone would take turns bringing in the Dunkin' Donuts. And George Hiskus had to have the chocolate iced donut. That was his donut. So so we had this new person start, and they came over and they ate his donut.
Oh God!
So he comes out of his office. He's like, who ate my donut? Yeah, and then Allison, she had to have the sprinkles. So everyone had their particular donuts. And if you touched one of their donuts, heaven help you. But
well, we've come a long way. Was he joking at all, or was he totally
I don't know.
serious?
You can never tell with George. I think maybe he was kind of half serious.
Okay.
You run to Dunkin' Donuts right now and get me another donut.
Nice. Love it. Well, good. Yeah, we might not be here if it wasn't for George and, people like George and that cost-conscious mindset. So it was definitely necessary. And I know he did tremendous things for the company and was just, look, the cloud fees that we have today, it's very expensive. So, yeah, I know it's a different world, but he was able to somehow kind of manage all of those decisions and manage the entire company's IT infrastructure, really with a very, very low cost model that was kind of necessary at that point, just based on how scrappy we were and just kind of how, traffic just wasn't what it is today.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I remember back in, it was probably one of the appreciation dinners, back in like 2000, 2001. And George was recognized by your dad. And he said, listen, everyone was telling us to get off the I series, transition off that thing. And he said, George stuck to his guns and saved us a ton of money. So he made the exact right calls at the exact right time. So so transitioning to the next CIO, so Joe Iannello.
Right.
He was interesting.
Okay.
But talk about a shrewd negotiator. So I remember we were negotiating this deal for the images that we use on our websites with a company called Scene 7. So all the Scene 7 executives were here. So they come in, they give us a proposal. And then Joe looks at it, he goes, no. I'm thinking I need more like a 90% discount. And then I look, I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing? And they're like, okay, yeah, I think we can make that work. I was like, this guy is a negotiating god. And you've seen like the sweetheart deals he negotiated with, like the original SAP, the Traversity POS that we still have. He negotiated some awesome contracts, and out of that, I kind of absorbed that, and that's one of my favorite things to do is negotiate contracts. I think that may make me slightly insane, but yet it's one of my favorite things to do. So that was what I really took away from Joe. And then when Dave came in, Dave Massey, he really helped us transition, from the Hiskus days, to the modern data center environment. So during his leadership, we obviously migrated over from our data center here up to Atlanta and up to Tampa. So he really helped us leap forward. So that was really his best strength. What was a vision more for the future and laying that foundation. But then transition to Karen. So I've never seen anyone outside of Karen who can know how to talk to people and morph her message to make sure that they understand it and absorb it. So I'll put together a presentation deck, for instance, and then I think it's great, and then she'll say, Race, I think you should do this, and then we'll collaborate on it, and then every single time that presentation is really, really well received, so her ability to network as well. That's one of the things I've been working on a lot. Everyone in the industry knows her. So it's fantastic. We've leveraged those peer relationships a lot. But we went to NRF, the big show, a year and a half ago or whatnot, and there was this one after show party called the I think it was like the retail. Anyway, so it's a Kathy Hotka party. Anyway, so I get there probably a half hour before Karen gets there. And and I had my badge on. It said Race Byxbee Bealls, and then and so everyone came up to me and they said, "Oh, you're with Bealls?" I said, "Yes, I'm with Bealls." Where's Karen? No one wanted to talk to me. Everyone came up to me and asked, "Where's Karen?" So I'm like, I'm not going back to that party again.
That's funny. Yeah, she's been an incredible leader for us, and just a great person, great cultural fit, and definitely detail oriented. Maybe one of the most detail-oriented people that I've ever worked with. So, yeah. Well, awesome, awesome. So, what is it like today? Then you're managing cybersecurity, and so, I mean, is that just? I guess just starting at a high level. Do you feel pressure as it relates to that? I mean, it's kind of like you're managing the team that is responsible for Bealls not getting hacked by people.
Right.
So I mean, what's that feel? What's that like?
Well, I can tell you, I don't lose any sleep, and that's because I think I have a great team underneath me who's really spearheading the charge in that area. So we have a great defense in depth. Maybe obviously, I can't talk about the defense in depth that we do have since it's going to be a public podcast. But I mean the capabilities that we've had and that we're bringing in, like as you probably know, the artificial intelligence automation capabilities to make sure that when the threat actors or or the hackers come in, that we meet that challenge, we automate the response. If you wait seconds or days or whatever, your goose is cooked. So we need to make sure that we meet that threat. And we've got all the platforms in place and the processes in place to make sure that we're secure. So, and I think the testament to that is, we haven't gotten popped, so to speak, but I think I feel very comfortable in our protection capabilities.
What are the big companies that have gotten popped in the last 12 months?
Tampa General got popped. And actually it was interesting. So we're we're a customer of a major cybersecurity firm in Tampa, and they assumed the Tampa General account after they got popped. So so that's another thing that gives me a lot of comfort, is that we've engaged with third parties that know the subject matter extremely well also. So Tampa General, Colonial Pipeline was another big one. You're familiar with the big breach out of from England, like the $16 billion, that's reported out of England, associated with Google, Apple accounts, et cetera. There were some interesting ones recently. I forgot the healthcare company name, but it was an AI-driven healthcare company, and they lost over 460,000 records because their AI solution was corrupted. So that was one of the ones that was recent and interesting. So.
And the primary, and again, I'm going to ask you some questions about this, but if you don't have to answer anything that would give away any secrets or compromise us in any way, of course. But the primary way that people get into organizations is what are the top couple of ways that people?
Phishing's by far the number one.
Yeah. Email, right?
Yep. Yeah, and that's why we're so adamant about making sure that we conduct those phishing simulations. People don't necessarily like them, but as our fish click rate was 5x what it is now. I mean, we're extremely low in that rate.
So what you're saying is that the people within our organizations receive emails every day, and they get tons and tons of emails, and some of them come from people that are attempting to have them click on a link that would cause them to download some file or whatever, and then allow that hacker into our systems.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So and our click-through rate on those types of links is very low as it relates to the industry.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And we of course we have protection mechanisms above that. So we have what's called a secure email gateway. So that filters out a lot of the the garbage and whatnot. But every once in a while one will get through, and then if something does get through, then we have other layers of defense in order to take action on that. So like if someone does click on a malicious link, we detect it. We go ahead and we reset their credentials. So we have a lot of protection layers, outside of that gateway, and also our training mechanism. So yeah.
And where are the majority of these emails coming from?
It depends. A lot of them are come from Nigeria. There are a lot of state actors coming from. Pardon me. Coming from Russia, maybe North Korea. So and we so one of the things that another protection mechanism outside of phishing that we do is we do a lot of geo blocks. But geo blocks aren't necessarily protecting you against emails coming from that territory. Those geo blocks prevent someone from accessing like your website from Russia or from Kazakhstan or any of those other nations that are on the terror watch list or things like that. So we have geo protection capabilities as well as all those phishing protection capabilities I mentioned.
So it's state sponsored hacking.
There are those are the most well funded, and the ones you really need to be on the lookout for. However, since we're a relatively small corporation compared to the ones that they want to go after, it's like the utility companies. They want to go after the big financial companies. They aren't going to go after a regional retailer. So our profile is relatively low, but by no means can we rely on that as a safety mechanism. So that's why we still make sure that we're protected, just like a big financial firm is. But we know that our profile is fairly low.
So what percentage would you guess come from just random hackers that are acting alone, attempting to extort money from a business versus a more corporate group of people that are teamed together versus a state-sponsored kind of an approach? Like you see it coming from individuals, from groups of individuals that are working together, and then from state-sponsored, like Russia-sponsored or North Korea-sponsored. And how do you see those kind of break out in terms of percentage?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably say that given our relatively low profile and our state sponsors really probably aren't interested in the regional retailers, that's probably a fairly low percentage. It's probably more of the organized group. So you can probably, and then you have the one-offs, the prototypical kid in the basement. But I would say probably like 75% would be the organized groups. Maybe like 10% would be state sponsored, and the remainder would be a one-offs. So.
And what technology are they using now in order to generate these links? Is it stuff that they can buy just like anywhere, right? I mean, like it's just software that's for sale by you can get it off of Amazon. I mean, maybe not Amazon, but you can get it off of you can download it, I guess, from various sites that exist online legally.
Yep. Yeah. Well, not legally, but
oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. You can't buy it legally, but
okay.
But people in this community, they have access to a lot of dark web chat boards and whatnot, or dark web community sites, and they download like malware as a service or ransomware as a service and whatnot. Yeah. So you just go out there and you buy it. You may pay a flat fee to get access to it. Or you may say you kind of rent it, and then you say, I'm going to go ahead and try to compromise this company, and for every dollar I get out of it, I'm going to pay the people who actually wrote the software like 10 cents on the dollar.
I thought in other countries that where you had foreign hackers that this was actually legal that they're in their country it was legal to download this stuff.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, either way, it's crazy that exists out there and that it's that easy for people to get. So, what are people doing in terms of AI in order to combat these threats?
Well, it's interesting. So artificial intelligence so we're using that with our partner that is that's Tampa based, to make sure that we have the automated interrogation of all the events that are coming into our environment, automated detection of malicious intent. And then we're just now putting in place the automated actions on that malicious intent. So, for instance, if we detect that it's like someone's user account just logged into Tampa or just logged into Bradenton, and then it just logged into China, and then just logged into Bradenton, this system will automatically go ahead and lock that out. Force a password reset. We're extending that out to eventually to the firewall edge. So if we're seeing that someone is trying to penetrate our firewall edge, we'll go ahead and identify what geolocation they're coming from, what port they're trying to access on that firewall, and we'll go ahead and lock that down. So currently that's many of those steps are manual in nature. So the company will tell us, hey, we're seeing this, and we're just going to go ahead and flip the switch relatively near term to automate that.
Okay. What's the most fun part of your job today?
Probably working with my peers. We all have a really great a sense of camaraderie. So we like to joke amongst each other or whatnot. And I think one of the things that's a takeaway is that it's not necessarily camaraderie; it's more family. And that goes back to the point I made about the lack of attrition. Everyone feels like they're part of a team. They're part of a family. So, just like you like going home in the evening and spending time with your family, it's like, I love coming into work because I know that I'm going to get to see my family. So
what's the most challenging part of your job today?
It comes down to innovation. The landscape is changing so fast. Sometimes it seems daunting to keep up with it. Particularly with the advent of artificial intelligence. It's complicated. And it requires a lot of effort, thought, etc. So that's probably the most challenging, is making sure that you stay abreast. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I guess for you, I mean, and it's not different for a lot of people, but having worked with so many leaders in so many different areas, reporting to so many people and seeing so much change, that's kind of constant for a lot of people that have a 25-year career in corporate. But in addition to that, just the technology and the changes that exist within the technology area specifically kind of doubled down on that change that you experience, throughout your 25-year career here. So what is it, what would you say are some of the secrets to navigating that change within a corporate environment, within a technology division?
You always need I would say probably the number one thing is to stay abreast of trends. Have have a really strong peer relationship group. Like I mentioned with Karen Baby has really helped me a lot in that aspect. You need to know where the industry's going. And you need to plan way ahead. You don't want to be in a game of catch up. So one of the things we've been doing is we've completely revamped our data center footprint, our network footprint. Because we know that we're going to need that additional compute in years to come to power, our artificial intelligence initiatives, other initiatives. We don't want to get caught flat-footed when the business says, I need X, Y, Z. We're going to say, I'm sorry, we need to go ahead and go through a 2-year refresh cycle. We need to make sure that everything is available when it's needed. So you always need to have that forethought. So.
Okay, what about, you mentioned team a lot, and you mentioned kind of the lack of attrition that you've had, and so what have been the cultural changes that you've experienced over the last couple of dozen years working here? What have you seen in terms of culture for the overall organization when you arrived? How did it evolve over the years? And then maybe the next question will be what kind of today? What's it like today? But maybe we start a little bit back in the past.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so one of the things that really drew me to this company was that that it was a family company, and it still is a family company. And that's one of the things I think keeps people here. And it certainly keeps me here. And although we've introduced the values over the last couple of years, those are fantastic. But at its core, it's a family. And that's what keeps everybody here. But probably since the introduction of the values, people feel probably more intertwined with the fabric of what Bealls is. So I think that's probably the only way. It's remained kind of static in terms of being a family company, but it's evolved. So it's statically evolving, if that even makes sense.
And how have the values been impacted you and the people on your team?
So I think that there was probably a reluctance to be open, air your ideas. For fear of criticism. Lack of opportunities. If I criticize this, or if I air some type of, if I'm not transparent, then or if I am transparent, then someone may criticize me for that or hold it against me. Since everyone's embraced the values. People know that they can air those concerns. And previously, a lot of those concerns were valid. And if they weren't aired, they were never addressed. So you're able to address those issues well before they fester and become a big problem.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, is there one that sticks out for you as like important or meaningful?
I would say authenticity, and one of the things that it's always one of my favorite sayings is it's always easy easy to remember the truth. It's hard to remember all the lies. So never lie to people. If people know that you're telling them the truth, they can sense it, and they know that when they come to you and you're going to give them some feedback, they can trust what you're saying. So authenticity, always being truthful, is number one.
Well, good stuff, man. Yeah. What did we miss? Anything? What else would you like to communicate?
I don't know. Maybe one of the things I like to I like to mention is I always like to note that if you're a manager, you always need to be able to call BS. And what I mean by that is, if you, particularly when you're on the technical side, never lose sight of of your technical capability. You always want to keep some type of polish on your technical capabilities, because you never know when someone on the team is proposing something, whether or not they're just trying to pull something over on you or whatnot. So you want to, and this kind of goes into a secondary point, is if I can call BS on someone, that also means that I have a good subject matter expertise on it. And I love getting dirty. And that's one of the things I would advise people is, it doesn't matter how high up you get. If you get to be a vice president, if you get to be C-level, always get dirty. Your team will love you for it. So for instance, if we have a need on our security team or our infrastructure team, to tackle some item, it's like, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to take care of it. Just like yesterday, it's like we had to assign Robbie a co-pilot license. I didn't go and bother my team for it. I was like, sure, Karen, I'll go ahead and take care of that. I logged in and took care of it. So never lose sight of your technical capabilities. Always keep them fresh, and always be willing to mix it up with your team, because they'll appreciate it. Because just like the analogy of being a good general, you want to be a general up on the hill where you never interface with your people and just bark down orders, or do you want to be down there like Braveheart, mixing it up with everybody? I'd rather be Braveheart.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Well, it's great to chat with you, and really appreciate what you do for the company, of course, keeping everybody safe here. And you've been such a great member of the company and the culture that we have here for 2.5 decades now, that it's very much appreciated what you do for us, and the way that you do develop teams and interact with your teams is totally invaluable. So appreciate you. And I think with that, we will wrap it up.
Okay, great.
So,
thank you, man.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ryan.